The right to vote is critical to democracy, and the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, UNCRPD, underscores the equal right of people with disabilities to participate in political life. Sadly, in Africa, people with disabilities are yet to get their full recognition, as they are often discriminated against, making it unable for them to cast their vote or stand for political election in the local institutions. They are often excluded from political engagements and positions, leaving them unable to fully exercise and enjoy their guaranteed rights. Now, what efforts should be put in place to embrace election inclusivity by this group of people? Also, a major question in the lips of many is, are they ready for it? Well, answers to these questions and more will be answered soon by our guests who will be doing justice in the next half an hour. I'm the carrier, Clinton, and the program is Nigeria Today. We'll be right back. Now, joining us via Zoom is Jake Epele, CEO and founder, Tough Africa. You're welcome to Nigeria Today.
Good evening, madam.
So, Jake, tell us, from your own perspective, from what you've seen so far, how inclusive has the electoral process been for persons living with disabilities in Nigeria?
Okay, a little bit of wobbling on the volume, but I think I can hear you. There's a little bit of wobbling on the volume, but I think I'll try and hear you. Can you repeat the question, please?
Inclusive has the electoral process been for persons living with disabilities in Nigeria?
I hear you well. I'm really having problems with your audio, but okay. All right. Okay. So the extent of electoral process in Nigeria for persons with disability. Well, I think I would say that we are better off than where we're coming from. There's been a huge improvement. The fact that both the electoral umpire, the community of persons with disability, civil society, the security operatives are giving us a listening ear. That to me is the #1 dividend of our fight for an inclusive electoral process. When we started this fight, or the advocacy, if I may say, there were less than 10 persons with disability who have either contested the election, a few very, very minute number, one, and of course we still have problems with many of them that for one reason or the other are not able to make it. So there's been a huge improvement, but there's still a lot to be done if we must say that our democratic process is inclusive of women, youth, and especially persons with disability.
You said that, Jake, just like you rightly mentioned, we are not where we ought to be, but of course we've left where we used to be. Now, what are some of those key barriers, that individuals with disabilities, face in trying to participate in the elections, in Nigeria at all levels?
Well, the barriers are very obvious. There is a lack of awareness barrier. lack of information, um, very little attention is given to voter education. There is also institutional barrier where some, not the likes of INEC, but especially the State Independent Electoral Commission, are totally ignorant of, most of them are ignorant of inclusive election. So most of the local government elections that are ongoing, and some of them have already taken place, were void of inclusivity. You know, I don't think it's because the people did not want to make the election inclusive. It's just that, number one, they don't know what to do. Number two, they don't have the resources. And these resources includes information, the funding, the framework, you know. So you have institutional barrier. You also have accessibility, non-accessibility as a barrier, where persons with disability don't have access to either polling votes or electoral resources. You know, they before now, we didn't have the enabling law. It wasn't a law per se that persons with disability must be and will be included in the electoral process until 2010, when we had Section 56, subsection 1 and 2, you know, and then of course we repealed some part of that laws and replaced it with Section 54, subsection 1 and 2 of the Electoral Act 2022, which we are also trying to tweak and rejig in order to bring simple things like the right terminology. The current Electoral Act did a disservice to us in Section 54, subsection 1, when we were described as incapacitated people. That in itself is derogatory and dehumanizing. And those are some of the clauses that we want to repeal in the current 2022 Electoral Act, you know. And so the barriers are enormous. There is also funding barrier for the electoral bodies. The things that they ought to get in order to ensure inclusive practice in the field, they don't have the funds to get it. The Electoral Act 2022, the budget for INEC 2023 election has already been passed and money transferred to them when the Electoral Act came in place. And so they didn't have the funding to go all out and ensure that they have absolute inclusive election. However, this is where I commend Mahmoud. Mahmoud is personally interested in inclusive, is to the later. You know, there are some places that INEC hasn't done well, but in terms of inclusion, I can tell you with fear or no or favor, that without fear or favor, that INEC have done well. They have the institutional framework to drive inclusivity. They have the will. They have the practical approach to getting things done to ensure persons with disability participate in the electoral process. The problem, and I've said it times without number, I have said it even to Professor Mahmoud, the problem is that with all the good things he wants to do, all the good things he plans to do, by the time you get to the field, you will find a different thing completely. You'll find a situation where, you know, the people are not implementing the good work that the headquarters are trying to do. Now, I know where the problem lies. The problem is focusing on lack of training and where there is training is inadequate. And then you find a situation where these half-baked electoral officers, you know, that don't have total information about what to do, gets into the field, they are not able to administer inclusivity component of the election. You know,
okay.
That's where we are, you know. But is government interested in making sure that we have inclusive election? I can tell you, yes.
Thank you very much, Jake. We'll come back to you, but right now we'll take a short break and listen to some Nigerians on the issue of these cars. Don't go away.
Since they've given women opportunity to participate in a political sector, I also feel they should give people with disability space to participate.
Normally, even not being talking about giving chance to do politics, people don't really want to see people with disability. And most of the people that have disability, it's not even by their fault. Maybe they are born with it, they had an accident, or they have one thing or the other. And it can happen to anybody.
We're supposed to encourage them because it's their constitutional right. In the constitution, they say any office, public office, we're supposed to give disabled people 5% of the workforce in any public office. Then why not politics?
One of the ways to encourage people with disabilities is actually to reduce the price of form. A disabled person cannot afford the form of 100 million to actually contest for something. So them reducing the price of form will actually give them more confidence to, okay, want to contest for this particular position.
Most especially like in my state. Now what I can say is that like in your state, we have few of them in the local government level, in the state levels. But it's beyond that. Disabilities, every right, the ability has this disability. In as much, this is not something out of their carelessness, it's nature. So we all have equal rights.
We tend to look at them as incapable. We try to keep them aside, especially when it comes to the time of appointment and what have you. They don't really give them that special consideration. Maybe because people had this mindset that people living with disability are beggars or so to say, but it is not too good. It is good we also consider them into our political appointment, political whatever we are doing, because they are also human beings and they are also citizens of Nigeria.
Welcome back. This is still Nigeria Today, and we're looking at disability participation at all levels, talking about elections. And of course, I have Zoom, Jake Pele, and here in the studio, we are being joined now by Judge Dominic Awany. He's Assistant Program Manager, TAF Africa. You're welcome to Nigeria Today.
Thank you for having me.
George, I just want us to start immediately. I know when you came, you had the reaction of people there. What do you make of their reaction generally?
Yeah, the truth is that disability, though we have made some progress, it's still something that people don't understand to some extent. So people tend to look at disability with an attitude that is negative towards persons with disabilities, and of course that does more harm to persons with disability than even the disability itself. You know, and so that is a barrier. So that's what we call attitudinal barrier, where people stigmatize and discriminate against persons with disabilities and feel they are less than human beings. But the truth of the matter is that persons with disabilities are persons first. That's why we say persons with disabilities. They are persons first. They are human beings like every other person before the disability. So disability does not make someone less a human being. But unfortunately, a lot of people look at disability and then they feel persons with disabilities are not, you know, human beings. Some people say they are not complete human beings, you know, as if to say we have half human beings. Yeah, so generally that's what makes persons with disability vulnerable, you know, because of the societal perception about disability.
Now, talking about our electoral process in Nigeria, can you kind of provide a sort of overview of the current state of disability inclusion in Nigeria's electoral process?
Okay, yeah. Like I usually say, we are not where we want to be, but then we are not where we used to be. We have made progress. Yes, we institutionally, we see the EMBs, that's the election management bodies, making efforts to ensure that our elections are disability inclusive. Yeah, so of course, like INEC provides assistive tools, for certain disability types. For example, you see that INEC is providing Braille ballot guide, for persons with visual impairment, so that they can participate in the elections. You also see magnifying glasses for persons with albinism, so that they will feel part of the process, so that they participate in the electoral process. And then we also see large font posters, printed and placed, so that persons who cannot hear instructions, who cannot hear, will be able to read these instructions and understand what they are supposed to do. So, this is progress we have recorded. We cannot in any way throw that away. We have made some progress, but there is so much that needs to be done in terms of societal perception, in terms of, for example, why don't we provide sign language interpreters at the polling unit where you have persons with hearing impairment, okay? Of course, they will always tell you budget and all of that, but then there is nothing too much for us to provide for persons with disability to participate in the electoral process. Okay.
Now, back to you, Jake. Earlier on, you talked about some of the barriers, and you mentioned lack of awareness and ignorance. Ignorance, I want to think you're referring to the on the side of the persons living with disability, and of course, and other groups. Now, Jake, what are civil society organizations such as yours doing to create this awareness among persons living with disability? Because you have to know your right before you fight for it.
Well, thank you very much for that question. South Africa and other organizations, we're not the only one, and other organizations of persons with disability have been at the forefront, pushing through the lens of advocacy, project implementation, monitoring and evaluation, being in the field, rolling their sleeves, and ensuring that inclusivity is entrenched in the electoral process. And so organizations like South Africa has focused on a number of, or what I'll call a multifaceted approach in driving inclusion, especially in the electoral process. And one of the most profound projects we have rolled out that we are still implementing even in this off-cycle election and several local government elections is our Able to Vote campaign. Able to Vote campaign is designed as a voter education campaign that brings the electoral body face to face with the community of persons with disability, using instruments like town halls, very effective media engagement, bringing persons with disability face to face with the likes of INEC, and giving them the platform to interact with INEC, for INEC to say, this is what we can do for you, we are willing to do for you, this is the role you need to play, this is how we want you to do it, and this is how we will do it for you. So we create that platform through Able to Vote campaign. Able to Vote campaign also rolls out the training component where we train electoral officers, and arm them with knowledge. For instance, I was so grateful with some of the people you interviewed tonight, but you notice that many of them were using the wrong terminologies. They were using the wrong language. saying disabled people. You know, we are not disabled people. We are people with disability. Put us first before the condition. You know, so we do this from time to time, engaging the media. I want to really thank NTA, because we are who we are today, and we have been able to do what we are today by the grace of God, but also by the help of the likes of NTA. Every DG, including the current DG in NTA, has been very passionate about inclusion and supports us. We are on your show tonight. We didn't have to. We were not charged a dime. We don't take that for granted, you know, because television is expensive, you know. So we do that. We use technology as part of our Able to Vote campaign. We have our PWD Tech Hub, where we roll out technology and using technology to monitor election, to gather data, to ensure that resources are taken to where is needed. Let me delve a little bit into the technology and what technology can do. We have our observers app, like in a do election. We put a phone in the hand of our observers. Some of them were able to pay, others we asked them to log in and enjoy and have our eyewitness and use our eyewitness app to tell us what is happening in the polling unit. You know, so we're able to engage more citizens to monitor, to tell us whether this election is truly inclusive, whether what INEC said, they did it, what the political party said, they did it, what the security operative said, that they did it. So, but I want to zero in further on one very important aspect of intervention that can make inclusivity a reality. It's data. 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 If we are able to mine the data of eligible voters with disability, knowing them in disaggregated form, knowing where they are.
Thank you, Jake.
Limited resources.
Jake, I have to stop you here. I'm sorry. So that George can say something too before we run out of time. Now, George, Jake has, of course, touched quite a lot of areas, you know. So, what role here? Now we have off-cycle elections that is coming up, and of course, in the future, we're going to have more. So, what role can political parties play in ensuring inclusivity? You know, for persons living with disabilities? Yeah,
so political parties are an integral part of our democracy. They are part and parcel of the electoral processes. And of course, without political parties, you won't even have candidates vying for offices. Yeah, so they are very important and very key. It's important to make their processes and their systems inclusive. You know, gone are the days when people just assume that there are no persons with disabilities. I know when you're designing a program or a project or a campaign, you don't look at it with the eyes of persons with disabilities. So, of course, a person with disability are part of the society, and of course, they will always be part of, you know, whatever it is that we're doing. So, it is important that when political parties, you know, are going on rally, for example, you are going for your campaign. Is your venue accessible to persons with disabilities? Certainly, you have persons with disabilities who are also party members. So, would they be able to access your venue? Would they be able to access your platforms, your podium, where you are, you know, staging your campaign? And so, it's important when you are doing this thing, you have persons with disability among you who will help you to see those aspects that you may not see. Sometimes people don't do it deliberately; they just don't, you know, think that there are persons with disabilities. They don't mean to be bad, all right? So it's important to do that. And then in terms of their constitution, it's very important that political parties also make sure that they include persons with disabilities in their constitution and ensure that offices, you know, are also, you know, given to persons with disabilities. Let me say, they encourage persons with disabilities to also, you know, participate in their executive.
Thank you very much, George. With that, we'll wrap up today's episode of Nigeria Today. We had George Dominic Awai, he's the Assistant Program Manager, TAF Africa. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, via Zoom, we have Jacob Pelle, CEO, founder, TAF Africa. Thank you so much for your thoughtful inputs.
Thank you so much. And for your viewers, we are not people living with disability. We are people with disability or person with disability.
Okay, persons with disabilities. And thank you for being part of the program. Don't forget, Nigeria Today airs every weekday at 7:30 p.m. on NTA News 24. You can also watch a repeat at 10 p.m. today, and other episodes on www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. Once again, thank you for watching. I am Victoria.